Today's topic is too much data impairs decision making, and we're hoping to spend some time with you in the next half hour discussing some of the things that we've learned over the last 10 plus years installing BI. Let's get started. I thought we should kind of wrap this around some of the challenges that we see industry facing today. And in our world, the definition of industry where most of our customers are installed is in manufacturing and distribution. And there's a number of factors that, as I thought about things we've solved with BI, match up with some of the global challenges that we've seen. Everything from globalization of manufacturing operations. So whether you're a distributor or a manufacturer yourself, lead time on parts and having to track things through containers and things like this certainly has made your tracking reporting more difficult and lends itself very well to BI. Extensive mergers, acquisitions is another area. The fact that whether you're in the acquisition mode yourself or have been acquired, with that typically comes, at least in the short term, multiple accounting systems. And with multiple accounting systems come multiple databases, and therefore some of the simplest reports we used to do are now very complex due to the need to consolidate systems. Consolidation of data is another area that BI lends itself very well to. We can go through a couple more of these, but basically there are challenges that each of us face day in and day out that BI does a nice job of addressing. Volatility of raw material costs. You know, one of the things that we worked on one project where the customer themselves were challenged with not necessarily their shipping volume, but what made up that volume. They're in the food and beverage industry, and they ship oils, and that's a commodity-based product. And so they really wanted to track their inventory and their sales based on blends of oils. So the customer may be buying XYZ salad oil. From the customer's perspective, they got an invoice for that oil, but from our customer's perspective, the manufacturer, it was a blend of 2 or 3 oils. And so in the BI system, we were able to pull that information together so that internally they could report on oil blends and know their volumes against the commodity market, as opposed to they sold product XYZ, which really didn't tell the whole story about cost analysis. You know, another example, going back to the globalization of manufacturing, we did a neat little, it's kind of a simple project, but in a way it really was powerful in that throughout the BI system we were able to present some of the data in Chinese characters. And so in that particular environment, the accounting system wasn't able to support that type of data. But pulling the data out and presented it with Chinese characters allowed another whole group of people that couldn't get to data in the past able to understand it in their native tongue. So as all these things are happening, I think each one of you on the phone probably could look down this list and say, yeah, I've had that particular challenge. And that particular challenge is real in business today. You know, everything from shipping's delayed for various reasons, right? And the inability to analyze that data so you can anticipate the problem in the future. Unexpected cost drops. These are, you know, challenges that were relevant and existed in the past and still exist today. And these are some of the areas that, as I interview and talk to customers deploying BI, they bring as number 1 and number 2 to the environment. And so I thought I would just highlight for you kind of a problem resolution process that we went through with a couple of our distributors. The first distributor distributes large cabinet assemblies. And one of the major costs of those assemblies is freight. But another cost of those assemblies that they learned is that the short runs, So small orders were much less efficient than large orders. Obviously, being able to push larger orders to the assembly line gained a lot of efficiencies. So the sales team came up and decided that for a certain size order, larger orders, they would advertise and provide free freight. Well, after this program got in place, the accounting department came to us and said, okay, we've had this program running. Are we winning or losing? And within the BI application, we are able to pull the cost of that freight, particular to the customers, and tie it back to the invoices going out to the customers, and give a true analysis back to management as far as profitability of those customers on that program. And really we're able to analyze whether or not that program makes sense or not. In a second example, this particular customer was East Coast based, and we did a lot of drop shipping for them, for the customers. And so the billing address of those customers are all East Coast based, so analyzing sales by bill to really didn't make sense. And the question that they came up with or had to figure out is, which regions of the country are we shipping to, and do we have our third-party logistic warehouses properly located in the most efficiencies of those areas we're shipping to? And, you know, they certainly could do analysis by state and look at some of those things. What they came up with is, within the BI application, they assigned the shipping addresses to regions. From those regions, they were able to tie them to various warehouses throughout the country. And by simply looking at sales volume within those regions, they were able to determine where to put the next warehouse, possibly where to close a warehouse, and were really provided much better information than they ever got out of their accounting application to make smart decisions about location of warehousing. So simply by assigning an area of the country to a ship-to address within the BI application and reanalyzing sales based on those new matrices, they were able to make better decisions and service their customers better. In each one of these cases, I think we could break the analysis or the game-changing strategies that these customers came up with into three areas that I wanted to share with you in the next few minutes. The first area focuses on sales, improving sales, who's buying what customers are growing or declining the fastest, which customers have stopped buying, so customer trends, customer profiling. How high will sales demand go, sales forecasting. Strategy one is all focused around making smarter sales by answering the first questions first. And this is really customer sales focus. I would say that in most of our BI implementations, improving sales, not necessarily improving sales volume, but making smarter decisions about sales focus is probably the #1 reason that people move to BI. BI does a fantastic job of profiling your customer. You'll hear me say that a number of times. What a profile of a customer means, what is my customer buying today? What has been in their changes? So what products are they not buying that they used to buy? If I look at my top 10 customers, which customers are not buying product X, but all 3 of the other top 10 are, and why? It's really providing your sales force information they need to go have a conversation with your customer, information that typically isn't available in the operational system of the accounting application. And it really comes down to the calculation and the retention of your customer base. As our customers have consolidated in their markets also, holding on to the good customers is becoming more and more difficult. And I think strategy one is really focused on understanding our customer to maintain the customer. The second strategy that gets deployed quite often in the BI world is centered around inventory. And obviously, efficiency in managing inventory reducing overhead stocks, understocks, and unnecessary transfers is the second area that we see BI being deployed for quite often. We all want to be able to meet sales demand with minimum inventories on hand. We all want to be able to consolidate inventory information. And one of the key areas of consolidation from an inventory perspective is the ability to share information from outside sources. We've had a number of projects where we either get a sales forecast from a customer, or we'll get stock levels from a vendor, or we'll get price changes from a vendor. And the ability to analyze that external data against your accounting data in BI becomes a very, very powerful tool. Another very, very popular way of solving inventory issues within the BI application. The third strategy is really focused around the supplier. And so if I was to look at what we install for, first we're installing to solve sales issues. Second, we would be installing to solve inventory issues. And the third strategy would be to solve to become smarter about understanding our supplier, their trends, their limitations, production, things like this. And really being able to focus in and track supplier performance. Simply analyzing their ability to meet their required dates, their ability to, the effect that their price changes has on our sales history, our sales forecasting, being able to properly forecast and source to overseas providers. In other words, as we move overseas for a lot of our supplies, being able to track those container costs and the lead times necessary to meet demand is certainly a challenge that DI does a wonderful job of managing. When does business intelligence make sense for you? If you look back over the last month or so and you find yourself, or your standard process today is drilling in based on an accounting sales journal and storing that journal off to Excel so you can do analysis of what your customer is buying, then BI is something that you should be looking at. Excel is an absolutely wonderful analysis tool, but it's not a database. And so if you're having to take your accounting data and either rekey it or download it into Excel to manage sales tracking, then we need to talk. The second two items come around with maybe a little bit larger organization where you've gone to programmers, either internal or external. You've asked them to solve some of your information challenges, but it's just becoming too costly or too complex to manage through standard reports. So if you're always having to go back and deal with data reporting issues through programming, you really need to get your arms around a BI tool, learn that skill set so you become self-efficient in that world. And then the third thing I think about is what I refer to as ad hoc analysis. In other words, 2 or 3 years ago, your sales reports out of the accounting system told you what you needed to know. You really weren't slicing and dicing it. You really weren't asking different types of questions. It really met your need. And the ad hoc analysis was maybe done once a year at budget time, or a special quote you had to go to a customer for, or renegotiate a contract, but it wasn't the norm. And probably you don't necessarily need a BI. But if you find yourself wanting to reanalyze your data and figure out, top customer or top customer in a certain region of the country or things like this, where you really don't even know the question you're going to ask and you're really looking for that slice and dice, ad hoc analysis really doesn't lend itself well to reporting, but really fits well in a BI solution. In order to make a project like this successful, you really need to have an understanding of where the cost savings are going to come from. And so I put up 3 questions here that I think if you took a minute to evaluate, you probably could attach a number to and come up with the value of a BI solution. The first question is, does your organization currently capture the data necessary to evaluate business decisions? And if you go back and look in the last 6 months at maybe 1 or 2 decisions you've had to make, whether it's a new product line or a new color or a substitute part for a manufacturing run, if you just go back and look at that problem-solving process where you identified an issue, went to historical data to analyze it, to come up with a solution, how long did that take you and how efficient was that process? Because if you find some inefficiencies in your reporting when you're trying to make these type of business decisions, then I think it's time to analyze BI against those decisions. The second one is really a matter of how much time are we spending gathering data versus analyzing data. And really, this is probably, if I was to reorganize this, would probably be number 1. Because if we find ourselves keying data all the time, whether it's in Excel or in another medium, and offline adding things up, and really not having and spending more time gathering than analyzing, then we need to evaluate BI. The time savings there is huge. And then finally, because BI does such a wonderful job of profiling your customers, you just need to kind of think about what does it cost me to lose one customer. Because I can tell you that the ability to monitor a customer's trends, whether you're celebrating with a customer when their sales volume has doubled over a year, or you're giving the customer a call because you see their volume decreasing and you want to know why, is the way we keep in contact with our customers and keep those customers retained. The WAC group has 3 options for you in analyzing and better understanding BI. So if you take a minute and think back on the things we just went through, if any of those things resonate with you, then I would first suggest that if you can, certainly attend the seminar on the 21st at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, where we'll dive into data self-BI, addressing and showing you how we solved some of the problems we went through today. If that doesn't meet your needs, or you'd like to dive in and talk to me personally at any point in time, I'd be happy to set up a call. You can follow the link here, and I can schedule a follow-up call. We can talk about some of the things you're doing now and just give you an opinion on whether or not I think BI would be something you should be looking at. If the 21st doesn't work, or you'd like to kind of focus more in on a individual BI demo based on some of your own data or some of your specific concerns, we're available for those sort of demos. They usually run about 30 minutes at any point in time. We'd love to have you at the 21st seminar. We'd love to have a conversation with you on your strategies for BI. And if for some reason you're not ready for BI today, but you know somebody who is, certainly get a hold of us. We have a wonderful referral program that we'd be happy to reward you for providing us those referrals.